She hadn't spoken a single word since her mother died, until she saw the beautiful flight attendant with the magic curls. What happened next? No one expected it. Watch this emotional story to the end. And if it moves you, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. The terminal bustled with noise, wheels clattering against tile, overhead announcements warping through static, children tugging on their parents' arms and laughing at vending machines that glowed like treasure chests. But none of it reached 6-year-old Lena. She stood beside her father at gate 12, unmoving, her hands stuffed into the sleeves of her navy blue coat, her wild curls flattened beneath the hood she refused to remove. Marcus Bennett checked his watch again, departure in 45 minutes, and glanced down at his daughter. She didn't look up. She hadn't since they left Paris 2 hours ago. Not when the security guard handed her a sticker. Not when a woman in line complimented her sparkly sneakers. Not even when he knelt to tie her shoelace and whispered that Mommy would have said it looked like a shooting star. He didn't expect a response anymore. The silence was the loudest thing in his life these days. Marcus adjusted the strap of his carry-on and exhaled through his nose. He used to be better at this. Words, connection, warmth. Once upon a time, he could make Lena giggle with just a silly face or a finger puppet from the back pocket of his blazer. Now, everything felt like trying to speak underwater. Slow, murky, useless. When the boarding announcement called for first class, Marcus gently tapped Lena's shoulder. She moved without protest, robotically, clutching the stuffed koala in her arms, its fur worn down around the ears. They walked the jet bridge in silence, the girl and the man who loved her and couldn't reach her. They were among the first to board. Row 2, seats A and B. Enough space to pretend they were the only ones there. Marcus helped her into her seat, buckled her in with quiet fingers, and then sat beside her. She curled her legs beneath her, arms wrapped around the koala. Her face turned to the window, but her eyes didn't seem to focus on anything. As the rest of the passengers trickled in, Marcus pulled out his tablet, half-heartedly reviewing the specs of the Chicago office he was due to redesign. The client wanted more glass, more angles, less soul. He didn't care. Not today. And then, she arrived. Not Lena, not a passenger, but her. The flight attendant walked with the calm, practiced grace of someone who knew the space better than she knew the ground. Her uniform was crisp, but it was her hair that made time stall for a moment. Rich coils of deep brown black, voluminous and proud, cascading just past her shoulders. It shimmered when she turned beneath the overhead lights. Amara. Her name tag caught Marcus's eye, but it was Lena who saw her first. Really saw her. The little girl's gaze lifted from the window for the first time since boarding. She stared, wide-eyed, at Amara's curls. Amara noticed, not with a smile designed for passengers, but something gentler. "Would you like some juice?" she asked softly, crouching to Lena's level. "I have one with a sparkly rainbow on the box. Only the bravest travelers get that kind." Lena blinked, didn't move, but her fingers tightened slightly on the koala's paw. Marcus leaned forward. "She's not talking lately," he said, his voice low, apologetic. Her mother passed away this winter. She's been quiet." Amara didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Lena, the way someone might watch a bird they didn't want to scare away. "Quiet is okay," she said. "Silence says a lot, too." With care, Amara reached into her service card and pulled out the juice box. Bright pink with a smiling rainbow. She set it gently on the tray in front of Lena, then tapped the top of it twice with her finger. "Just in case," she said with a wink. Lena stared at the juice box. Her gaze lingered not on the rainbow, but on the curls that framed Amara's face, thick, soft, shaped like the ones her mother used to let her play with on Sunday mornings. "Your hair's magic," Lena whispered. Amara stilled. Not because she hadn't heard, she had, and so had Marcus, whose heart stopped mid-beat. It was the first word Lena had spoken in 3 months. Amara smiled, genuine and warm. "Thank you," she said, her voice just above a breath. "It has good days and bad days, but I like it. It reminds me I'm real." She stood slowly. Marcus was still staring at Lena, who now reached, tentatively, shyly, toward the juice box. Her fingers brushed the straw. "I'll be nearby if you need anything," Amara said as she continued down the aisle. Marcus couldn't speak. He could only watch as his daughter unwrapped the straw and pushed it into the box, taking a small, careful sip. It was the smallest moment, and yet, for him, it felt like witnessing the first sunrise after years of darkness. 40 minutes into the flight, Lena had finished the juice. She hadn't spoken again, but she hadn't returned to the window either. She watched the flight attendants intently, especially when Amara passed by. At one point, Amara knelt again, this time with a small tray and a napkin folded like a heart. "I brought some crackers and cheese," she said softly, "and a tiny chocolate. It's okay if you don't eat, but I wanted you to have something of your own." Lena didn't move, but her eyes stayed on Amara's face. Amara sat back on her heels and asked, almost in a whisper, "Do you want to touch my hair?" Lena nodded. Carefully, Amara leaned forward, letting the girl's tiny hand explore the soft halo of curls. Lena's fingers twisted gently into one coil, then another. "It's like clouds," she said, voice soft, raw, unsure. Amara smiled. "I think yours will be too. One day." Lena pulled her hand back. She looked over at her father. "She's a magic lady?" Marcus pressed his hand to his mouth. He couldn't hide the tremble in his lips. "Yeah," he said hoarsely. "I think she is." By the time they began their descent into JFK, Lana had eaten half a cracker, placed a sticker from the flight kit on her koala's paw, and said a total of 4 sentences. 4 more than in the last 90 days. When the wheels touched down, Amara passed their seats one last time. She paused, bent down, and said to Lena, "You are brave. Don't forget that." Then she stood and continued toward the galley, her curls bouncing slightly with every step. Lena watched her until she was out of sight. At baggage claim, Marcus crouched in front of his daughter. "You did good today, baby," he said. "She smells like vanilla," Lena murmured. "And sunshine." He blinked. "Who?" "The magic lady." Marcus stood slowly, heart full and aching. "She has a name, Sweet Pea, Amara." Lena repeated it once. "Amara." She said it like a secret, like something she planned to keep. And as they stepped out into the cold New York air, something warm and unseen curled around them both. A beginning. The snow outside the Manhattan Hotel window fell in soft, slow spirals, like confetti from a sky that hadn't learned how to celebrate. Inside, Lena sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, her koala clutched to her chest, eyes fixed on the steam rising from a mug of hot milk. She hadn't spoken since the plane landed. Not one word in the cab. Not during check-in. Not even when Marcus let her press the elevator buttons herself. But he didn't push. Not now. Not after the miracle in Seat 2B Amara. The name had stayed with him like a melody he couldn't hum, but couldn't forget either. The flight had ended, but something about her hadn't. Lena hadn't said it outright, but Marcus could see it. The way she turned at every rustle in the hallway, the way she watched people pass by the lobby windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of curls and kindness. Marcus poured himself a weak cup of hotel coffee and leaned against the counter. He was a man used to fixing things, blueprints, supply delays, zoning conflicts. But this? His daughter's grief? Her silence? He was as lost as a tourist with no map. Then came the knock. Soft. 2 beats, then 1. He opened the door and froze. Amara stood there, out of uniform, dressed in a forest green coat with snowflakes melting into her curls. A tote bag hung from one shoulder, a small puzzle box poking out the top. "I'm not stalking you," she said with a faint grin. "Your daughter invited me." Marcus blinked. "What?" She lifted her phone. A text message thread displayed a photo of Lena's sticker-covered koala next to a juice box and a scribbled note. "Magic lady, please visit. I miss your hair." "I gave her my number in case she ever wanted to talk," Amara said. "Didn't expect it to come so soon." Behind him, a small voice echoed from the bedroom. "She's here?" Amara peeked over his shoulder and smiled. "Hi, little lion." Lena ran, not walked, ran, straight into Amara's legs, wrapping her arms around them like they were the anchor she'd been searching for. Marcus stepped aside. "Come in." They sat on the floor of the hotel room, the bed behind them a forgotten detail. Amara unpacked her bag, coloring books, a tiny bottle of glitter glue, a box of animal-shaped pasta, and a crumpled paper crown. "What's all this?" Marcus asked. "Magic," Amara said, "or, therapy with sparkle." Lena's eyes danced as Amara placed the paper crown on her head. "You are now Princess Curls of the Quiet Kingdom," Amara declared, "and I am your royal hairdresser." Lena giggled, a sound so small it might have disappeared if not for the silence it broke. Amara leaned in. "You know, my curls weren't always this confident. When I was your age, I tried to brush them straight because someone said I looked messy." Lena's smile faded. "Were they mean?" "Not mean," Amara said softly. "Just not magic. Not everyone knows how to see magic in curls." Lena nodded like she understood exactly. Amara pulled a small mirror from her tote and placed it in front of Lena. "Look," she said. "See those baby curls around your ears? They're trying to grow into something beautiful. You just have to let them be wild a little longer." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, watching the scene unfold like a man at a museum window, awed, unsure he had the right to enter. "You have a gift," he said finally. Amara shrugged. "No, I just remember what it's like to want someone to see me." Lena reached out and touched one of Amara's curls again. "It's soft, like Mommy's." Marcus's breath hitched. Amara didn't flinch. She placed her hand gently over Lena's and said, "Tell me about her." Lena shook her head. "I forget her voice. I try, but it's gone." "You didn't forget," Amara said. "It's just sleeping. Sometimes it takes the right song or the right moment to wake it up." Lena stared at her. "Do you know a song?" "I know one," Amara said, "but only the bravest princesses can sing it with me." "I'm brave," Lena whispered. Amara smiled. "Then you start and I'll follow." There was a beat, a long silence. Then Lena opened her mouth and hummed. Off-key, soft, but there, a shaky note followed by a second. Amara joined in gently, not overpowering, just enough to hold the tune steady. Marcus turned away, tears pooling. Not sadness, not grief, but something softer, a kind of hope he hadn't dared to name. That night, Marcus offered Amara the guest room. She hesitated. "I don't want to confuse her." "She's already confused," he replied. "But you? You're the first thing in months that's made sense." Amara looked at him, really looked, and nodded. In the morning, Lena woke up and didn't call for her father. She padded down the hallway and climbed into bed beside Amara, curling up like she belonged there. "Good morning," Amara whispered. "Your hair smells like pancakes," Lena said. "That's because I brought Mix," Amara whispered. They both laughed. Marcus stood in the hallway, heart full, arms crossed, smiling. He didn't know what this was becoming, but he knew one thing. It was no longer just survival. It was beginning to feel like life. The city moved outside the windows, relentless and alive. But inside Marcus Bennett's Manhattan apartment, spacious, modern, too clean to feel like anyone truly lived in it, everything had slowed. The stillness wasn't silent anymore. It was calm. Lena sat on the rug in the living room surrounded by paper dolls and magic markers, her tongue sticking slightly out between her lips as she concentrated. Her stuffed koala, now wearing a makeshift paper crown and pink scribbles for shoes, sat propped beside her like a royal assistant. Across the room, Amara was curled up on the sofa, still in her oversized lavender sweater and leggings. Her curls spilled freely over her shoulders, catching little flecks of sunlight that peeked through the glass balcony doors. She was barefoot, one leg tucked under her, holding a mug of warm tea Marcus had made an hour ago. He had no meetings that day. He'd canceled all of them. Lena had asked quietly, "Will she stay today, too?" And for Marcus, that was enough. She was staying, not as a guest, not as a favor, but as something that had quietly begun to take root. They spent the morning in Central Park, not the manicured part that tourists photographed, but a quiet corner near the pond, where the benches were cracked and the squirrels bowled. Lena walked beside Amara, holding her hand, pointing at ducks and guessing their names like old friends. "That one's Veronica," she said. "She looks like she wears eyeliner." Amara laughed, rich and full. "Veronica's fierce." Marcus followed a few steps behind, watching. It was the first time Lena hadn't asked to be carried, hadn't tugged at his sleeve to go home. He realized now how much he'd underestimated what a child could feel, and what they could carry. At one point, they sat on a bench beneath a tree already shedding early blossoms. The air was still cool, but the sun warmed their shoulders. Lena plopped between them, holding both their hands. "She likes you," Marcus said, his voice quiet. Amara glanced over. "You say that like it surprises you." "It does." "She doesn't let people in easily?" He shook his head. "She doesn't let people in at all. She hasn't smiled like this since—" He trailed off. Amara didn't press. She looked down at Lena, who was now braiding a flower stem into a knot. "She doesn't have to let people in," Amara said. "She just needs someone to meet her where she is." Marcus was silent for a moment. "You do that well." Amara didn't answer. She didn't smile. She just looked at the child holding her hand and said softly, "It's not a skill, it's memory." That afternoon, back at the apartment, the floor became a world of its own. Amara and Lena sat cross-legged with colored pencils and construction paper. "What's this one?" Amara asked, pointing to a scribbled burst of orange and purple. Lena tilted her head. "It flies." "Where?" "Anywhere." Amara smiled. "That's the best kind of flying." Marcus watched them from the doorway, phone in hand but untouched. He had already missed 2 calls and postponed another meeting. His world, timelines, investors, design revisions, was beginning to feel smaller, less urgent. This mattered more. He stepped into the room and sat on the floor beside them, legs stiff and awkward. Amara passed him a crayon without a word, half a joke, half an invitation. He accepted. They colored together, the 3 of them, with nothing but the sound of soft humming and the scratch of pencil on paper. That evening, Lena curled up in bed after her bath, damp curls pressed to the pillow, koala tucked under one arm. Amara sat on the edge of the bed reading a story, something about a girl who lived in a treehouse and talked to owls. Again? Lena asked when it ended. Amara blinked. Again? Lena nodded. Okay, Amara said, and began from the start. Marcus stood in the hallway, arms folded, watching. Lena's eyes were wide, the kind of wide that meant trust, that meant comfort. When the second reading ended, Lena pulled the covers up to her chin and whispered, "Will you be here tomorrow?" Amara brushed a curl off her forehead. "If your daddy says it's okay." Lena turned to Marcus. "Can she stay for pancakes?" Marcus smiled. "She can stay for whatever she wants." Later that night, Amara sat on the couch in the living room, legs tucked under her again, a blanket around her shoulders. Marcus brought her tea and sat beside her, close but not too close. "I don't know how you do it," he said. "I've been trying to get close to her for months." Amara's eyes stayed on the balcony window, where the city lights blinked in soft yellows and reds. "You're close," she said. "Not like you." "That's because I'm not afraid of her sadness." Marcus flinched, not visibly, but the words hit hard. "You are," she added gently, "and I get it. You lost her mother. You see her grief, and it makes you remember your own." He stared down at his hands. "I thought being strong meant not falling apart." "Strength is showing up anyway," Amara said, "even when you don't know how." He looked at her then, really looked. "What reminds you?" Amara took a deep breath. Her silence. Marcus waited. "When I was little," she said slowly, "I stopped speaking for 6 months. After my dad left, my mom, she was too busy surviving to notice. I had a teacher with braids down to her waist and laughter that filled the room. She never forced me to talk, just sat beside me every day at lunch. One day, she asked if she could braid my hair. That was it. I said yes. First word in months." Marcus swallowed. "What happened to her?" "She moved, but I never forgot her. Not the words, just the way she stayed." They sat in silence after that, not uncomfortable, just full. Then Marcus said, "You're doing the same thing now. For Lena." Amara nodded. "It's not about saving anyone, just being there." Later that night, Marcus scrolled through old videos on his phone. He found one he hadn't dared watch in over a year. His wife, Camille, sitting on the hospital bed, fresh from giving birth, holding Lena in her arms. Her laughter rang through the room as he clumsily tried to swaddle the baby. His younger self looked tired, but full of awe. Lena's newborn cry had filled that moment. Now, Lena crept from her bed, silent as a breeze, and climbed into his lap. She rested her head on his chest and looked at the screen. "That's Mommy," she whispered. He didn't reply. He just wrapped his arms around her and let the video play to the end. The next morning, the apartment felt warmer somehow. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in softer colors. Amara was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes, her curls tied loosely at the nape of her neck. Lena danced around the table, humming, her bunny in one hand, drawing invisible shapes in the air with the other. Marcus leaned against the doorway, watching them. "You're making her favorite," he said. Amara turned slightly. "She told me pancakes taste better when you flip them before the song ends." "What song?" Amara smiled. "She's making it up as she goes." Marcus laughed. "Aren't we all?" He moved into the kitchen and pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. "I can at least handle coffee." Amara looked at him. Progress. Later, the 3 of them sat on the balcony, a picture book open across their laps. Lena pointed at a lion on the page. "Daddy's this one." Marcus raised a brow. "Why a lion?" "Because you're strong," Lena said, "but you don't roar at me." Amara blinked. Marcus looked down, visibly moved. "Thanks, kiddo." Then Lena added, "And Miss Amara is the bird." Amara smiled. "What kind of bird?" "A sky bird," Lena said, "the kind that only lands if it finds the right place." Marcus and Amara exchanged a glance. The child had named them better than they ever could. The air inside Marcus's apartment was still that morning, the kind of stillness that made every sound feel louder. Clinking mugs in the kitchen, the low hum of the dishwasher, the shuffle of slippers on hardwood. Amara stood by the counter, tying her hair back into a loose bun. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and pancakes, but her hands weren't moving. She stared out the window, fingers trembling slightly at her sides. Lena sat at the table, her legs swinging from the chair, tracing circles into the condensation of her warm milk glass. Her bunny sat in her lap, its tiny stitched mouth pressed to her fingers like it knew she was thinking hard. It was their last day together. At least, that's what Amara had told herself. 3 days. That's all she'd promised. But it had been 4. Marcus entered the kitchen quietly, still in the soft sweatshirt he rarely wore around anyone. He poured a cup of coffee, glancing between the 2 girls, the woman who had anchored his daughter and the daughter who had become his compass again. "I thought we might go out later," he said, watching Lena. "There's a small cultural center nearby. Kids programs, art, music, might be fun." Lena looked at Amara, not her father. "Will you come?" Amara's voice faltered. "Yes, if you want me to." Lena didn't answer. She just stood, reached for Amara's hand, and placed it in hers. The cultural center was tucked between buildings in Brooklyn, modest, bright, and smelling faintly of crayons and lavender. In one corner, a woman sat at a small piano, playing gentle melodies meant for little hands and little hearts. Lena hesitated at the threshold of the music room, her hand gripping Amara's tighter. "You don't have to sing," Amara said softly. "Just listen." But Lena didn't stay in the doorway. She took one step, then another, until she was beside the piano. She stood still for a moment, then began to hum. Amara's breath caught. The tune, wobbly and hesitant, was one she hadn't heard in years. "You Are My Sunshine." Lena turned to her. "That's the song," she said, "the one Mommy used to sing." Amara knelt beside her, blinking back sudden tears. "How do you know that?" Lena shrugged. "It came back. It was asleep, but it woke up." She reached for Amara's hand. "Can we sing it together?" They did. There, in a sunlit room filled with soft notes and paper butterflies, their voices rose, one fragile, one sure, and met in the middle. Marcus returned from a quick work call to find Lena asleep on Amara's shoulder, music sheets still clutched in her hand. He didn't speak. He just stood in the doorway, something inside him crumbling and rebuilding all at once. That evening, the apartment glowed with warmth that wasn't artificial. Amara and Lena sat on the floor, coloring the wings of a bird. "Does it fly high?" Amara asked. "Very high," Lena said. "Like Mommy." Amara paused. "That's a good place to fly." Later, as bedtime approached, Lena pulled something from under her pillow, a folded photograph. It was old, the corners worn. Her mother, Claire, lay in a hospital bed, smiling with tired eyes. Newborn Lena rested against her chest. Marcus stood beside them, younger, unsure, in awe. "She's beautiful," Amara whispered, taking the photo gently. "I was born that day," Lena said. "She died the next." Marcus stood in the doorway, frozen. "She smelled like flowers," Lena continued, "and she sang before I fell asleep. I forgot the song, but it came back today." Then her voice broke, and for the first time in over a year, since the funeral, Lena cried. not loudly, not in panic, but the quiet, aching cry of a child who had held something in too long. Amara didn't speak. She didn't try to stop her. She just opened her arms. And Lena fell into them. Marcus didn't enter the room. He just stood in the hallway, hand on the wall, letting his daughter grieve. For her mother, for her memory, for herself. That night, Marcus sat on the balcony, knees drawn up, a blanket draped over his shoulders. Amara joined him without asking. "She remembered more than I thought," he said. "She's been waiting for permission to say it," Amara replied. He looked at her. "Permission from who?" "From you." That hit harder than he expected. "I thought protecting her meant not bringing it up, not making her relive it." "Grief doesn't wait for a parent to open the door," Amara said. "It finds its way in eventually." They sat together, watching the lights blur beneath the misty sky. "Did you have someone?" he asked. "Who held space for your grief?" Amara hesitated. "My grandmother, but by the time I needed her most, she was already gone." Marcus nodded. "I'm sorry." "Me too." The next day, while Marcus was out for a quick meeting, Amara took Lena back to the cultural center. The same piano was there. The same quiet corner. This time, Lena didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the piano, climbed onto the small bench, and began to hum the song again, louder now, clearer. The woman at the piano smiled. "She has a beautiful ear," she said. "She has a beautiful soul," Amara replied. Afterward, they returned to the apartment. Lena skipped down the hall ahead of them. "She's glowing," Marcus said. "She's healing," Amara said. "She just needed space to do it." He paused. "So did I." That evening, during dinner, Lena set down her fork and looked at Marcus and Amara. "Can she stay forever?" The room stilled. Amara looked at Marcus. He met her eyes. "If she wants to." "I want to," Amara whispered. Lena beamed. 2 weeks passed. The apartment changed. Softer, messier in the best way. Drawings on the fridge, books piled in corners, pancakes every Tuesday. Marcus still worked. He still answered emails. But he also learned how to braid Lena's hair, how to fold tiny paper cranes, how to stop time by just being there. And Amara, she learned how to unpack, how to let a toothbrush sit in one place without guilt, how to say yes to a future she'd once believed wasn't meant for her. One night, Marcus found her standing by the window, arms folded. "I was supposed to leave after 3 days," she said. "You still can." "I don't want to." He stepped closer. "Then don't." She turned toward him. "I don't know how to stay." "Then we'll learn together." He offered his hand, and this time she took it. Lena stood in the hallway, watching them, Bunny in her arms. She smiled, and for the first time in her young life, she knew home wasn't a place, it was them. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If it moved you, inspired you, or simply made you feel something real, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We read every message and share powerful stories like this every single day. See you in the next one.